Hi, I'm Michelle Fitzgerald with the Sensar Learning Center, and today I'm talking with you from one of my favorite spots on the planet. This is a place called Page Springs. It's a place in Page Springs, Arizona called Bubbling Ponds, and it's a nature reserve, part of a big, huge amount of acreage owned by the Arizona Fish and Game, and the Arizona Fish and Game and the Arizona Audubon, Northern Arizona Audubon Society help manage the land. It's an incredible nature reserve. There are many varieties of native trees. Like behind me is a beautiful desert willow, an old desert willow tree. There are giant cottonwoods, ash, mesquite groves, ancient mesquite groves. It's really quite extraordinary. It's also an important bird area, so there's about 120 bird species that move through this area, some which stay here all the time and others that migrate through depending on the season. But this is far more than just an incredible slice of nature. This is what I call an enlightened landscape. A very special enlightened landscape, or a temple, a naturally occurring temple of light. Now, what I mean by that is there are physical and subtle energy properties here that elevate or greatly amplify the consciousness of nature in this space. And when you spend time in the space, any human being would benefit from spending time in a place like this. It elevates your personal level of enlightenment. You kind of ride on the consciousness of nature when you're in a spot like this. And the benefit of that is that the level of kind of boost of light or consciousness that you achieve just by being in a space like this helps you remember your core. It takes you instantly, or connects you instantly with your core, which is spirit, and it connects you instantly, consciously, with the core of nature, which is spirit. And you recognize very rapidly that I call it a return to oneness, that state of we are nature, nature is us. And it's a profound experience. Not only does it feel fantastic, but it's very balancing to remember our core, to go to the core, to remember our spirit essence and really commune with that. It's very soothing. It is incredibly healing and balancing. And it creates or generates the frequencies of peace and compassion. And that is hugely beneficial to not only you, but the entire planet and all species on the planet. When we spend time in places like this and then we leave and go home, we're almost like little acupuncture needles. We carry a piece of the place, a remnant of the memory of the place and those frequencies of peace and compassion that are ever present in places like this. We bring them into our everyday environments, and it's almost like dropping a little pebble in a pond, that it creates a ripple effect, and that a frequency of peace and compassion just radiates out from you wherever you plant yourself. For a time, it will fade in all likelihood, but it radiates out for a time, and it literally positively infects everyone around you and everything around you with peace and compassion. And there's a great need for this today on our planet, to infect the world, especially the human species, with peace and compassion. So I want to share with you today a little bit about why this place is an enlightened landscape. What makes it, what elevates it to that level? How is it different than just any natural setting? All settings of nature have elevated light levels, elevated levels of the consciousness of nature. When you have pristine natural settings that aren't bombarded with the makings of technology, our technology of today, lots of sound, noxious energies that could damp down what I call light reflectivity of the place. When you have nice, clean, natural settings like this, you always have an elevated level of consciousness, or it's easier to sense the consciousness of nature in settings like this. But this place has everything going for it. It's got trees, trees, which reflect their high consciousness into the space. We've got tons of birds. I already mentioned it's a bird sanctuary, basically an important bird area. So we've got all these different bird species, and birds are what I call high light creatures. Just their very beings, their very forms are very pure. They're able to reflect the spirit very easily through themselves, and you could consider that reflection of spirit a degree of consciousness, and it elevates the consciousness level or the light levels, the level of enlightenment in any place where birds spend a lot of time, where there are a lot of birds doing their bird thing. What else we have going for us here is that we've got a lot of underground water. It's called Page Springs, and it's called Page Springs because there are all these naturally occurring springs, water springs, that literally bubble up here. And underneath me is a lot of limestone, the substructure underneath the surface soil here. There's a tremendous amount of limestone, and limestone is very easily cut away by water. And so you end up with these natural sources of water creating these underground streams that just run everywhere in this area. Now, when you have an underground stream running like this, and maybe 20 or 30 or 40 feet below that, you have another, or 10 feet below that, you have another underground stream running like this, you get a crossing of the streams. It's like a crossing of two lines of force. And right where that crossing happens, where not the streams themselves crossing, but the energy fields of the streams, you get basically a standing wave. And that standing wave in the environment creates an elevated, I call them points of light. It creates a type of subtle energy burst of light that enlivens the entire environment. So with my intuitive sensing abilities, I'm very clairvoyant. I can actually see these, I'll call them points of light. Here there are thousands of these points of light where you just have nature doing its thing, particularly with underground water, and enlivening and enlightening the environment, making the consciousness of nature, amplifying it, making it so incredibly easy to sense it. And again, when we can sense it, it impacts us profoundly because it triggers our memory that we are nature, we are one with nature. Again, that return to a state of a conscious state of oneness. Now, the other thing that this particular place has going for it is that it's incredibly quiet. And you'll find that in nature settings, as often there's a tremendous degree of silence. And that's getting increasingly hard to come by today in our modern world. So just the fact that it's very, very quiet here. Now, it's not just, I'm going to be quiet for a moment and let you hear. You may hear a chirp of a bird or the cicadas. It's a type of bug with these really pretty iridescent wings. It's their time of year, so you may hear the cicadas doing their thing. But I'm going to be quiet and just let you hear the physical silence in the space. It's quiet. It's very quiet. The first time I came out here, this was a number of years ago, the sound of the silence, I will call it the sound of the silence, which also facilitates our ability to touch our core. The sound of the silence was so profound, I almost fainted when I first came out here. It's quiet all the time, other than again, you might hear the rustling of a leaf or the sound of a bird or the sound of a cicada, or maybe you'll hear the subtle flapping of the wings of the butterflies if you're super sensitive. A heron flying by and you hear their big, the sound that their big wings make, and that noise, that caw that they make when they fly, the screech of a hawk, that type of thing. You may hear those sounds, but they're very harmonious. They're not cacophonous like traffic in a suburban, or a downtown area in a city. They're not cacophonous. It's not disharmonious. It's very, very harmonious sound, and for the most part, it's completely silent. Now, the other thing that's unique about this area is it's not only silent from an audible noise standpoint, it's very silent from a radio frequency standpoint. One of the biggest challenges today that I find for myself and my students is merging with the silence in our everyday. The silence is very powerful to spend time in silence. It's becoming increasingly difficult to do that in our modern environments because of radio frequencies. They are so intense, and there's so much of it going on because of our wireless communication, cell phone towers and antennas, you know, our cell phones themselves, our wireless computers, iPads, all that type of thing. It creates a tremendous amount of discordant, inaudible to us sound in the environment. Now out here I've got a pretty sophisticated radio frequency meter, and I've brought it to this area, and you're hard pressed to find a single speck of what will register on my highly sophisticated meter radio frequencies. Now I'm going to come over and I'm going to show you, I'm going to scan the area and show you a little bit more of this natural setting. But I'm going to show you why it's so quiet from a radio frequency standpoint. Number one is there aren't a ton of humans out here with radio frequency generating devices. I have no cell phone with me. There isn't anybody out here that has a cell phone or anything like that. There are no radio towers nearby. There are no microwave transmitters nearby. And there's a huge advantage, and I'm going to show you what it is in a minute. Let me come up here and grab the camera. This may be a little bit rough. One girl show here. As I show you, this is that tree. I just want to show you a little bit more of that beautiful, it's split, you see it there? It's kind of on, you know, on the ground, part of it, and then branches of the willow have grown up. It's really beautiful. Move around. Over in the distance, there's an ash tree. And then there's a giant old cottonwood right there. You see the grasslands. The birds love this. Now out in that grasslands, it's kind of marshy. There's lots of, in fact, there's areas where you might be able to see in the distance. If I move over here a little bit, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but out in the distance, there's a whole marshy area of cattails. And that's how much underground water is out here. Again, that creates that situation where we've got all those standing waves that are like points of light in the environment. They are supercharged, subtle energy bursts or holding spots of the consciousness of nature, literally. But what I want you to pay attention to is actually the hills in the background. They're made up mostly of sandstone and limestone, a little bit of basalt at the top of some of these hills, but the limestone is very, very much a filtering agent, and just the hills themselves act as a type of filter. The entire hill, or the entire area, if I scan here, you can see part of it, is surrounded by these hills, and those hills filter out radio wave activity. Now, if there were microwave repeaters on top of the hills, that wouldn't help us out, but in fact, out here, there actually are not. So it's just clean, clean, clean from a radio frequency standpoint. So I'm going to move the camera back. See if I can get it positioned properly. There you go. Okay, so we've got underground water creating standing waves, which are like will create points of light in a clean environment. If you've got an environment that's got a lot of noxious energy, a lot of psychic energy, negative psychic energy from humans, you might have standing waves, but they will be just polluted with negative energy. You would call that a minor negative vortex. Here, all these little standing waves are positive vortexes. They're Sedona, which is only 15 minutes away, is kind of famous for that. It's a giant vortex zone. What are all those vortexes about? Well, a lot of it's about underground water, and again, this same type of phenomena. Sedona under that area is basically huge spans of limestone where you've got huge amounts of water, even though we're in the desert, running under and creating these underground streams. So we've got the water, we've got the trees, we've got the birds. The birds themselves, again, lend their light. We've got things like butterflies, we've got lots of bees. These are other high light light creatures that literally reflect spirit through those wonderful, delicate forms of theirs into the landscape and enlighten or raise the consciousness of the landscape itself, of the earth itself. Beyond that, beyond the water and the birds and the bees and the trees and the grasses and the lack of radio frequency, the lack of noise because we're so buffered by these hills, beyond that, sometimes if you're really lucky, you end up with, you can find places like this with all those elements. But on occasion, places like this with those elements will be one notch elevated from standard spots like this on the planet. As amazing as this, as spots like this, any spot like this would be, sometimes you'll end up with star intelligences communicating with the landscape. And that is the case with this spot that I'm at today, with this spot in Page Springs, this wonderful nature reserve. The standing wave activity is constant here. The underground water is constant, and it creates, and the silence is constant here. And that creates that lack of interference, and those wonderful standing waves create the perfect platform for star intelligences to actually communicate here. Now, stars are not just big hot globs of hot gas. They're not that. They are that, but they are highly intelligent beings. And from the inception of our planet, star intelligences, our own sun, which is a star, but also you could call them helper stars, have been communicating with our planet, and they are responsible for creation, literally. They hold the, you could call it the software of creation, or they deliver the programming of creation for our planet. Now, the stars that communicate with our planet and deliver the data that causes all of creation on our planet, they change from time to time, but there are special spots on the planet that are just energetically, from a subtle energy standpoint, from a geophysical standpoint, perfect for star connection. The stars can only connect in places where there are stable standing waves and where there is not a lot of external interference. And this is such a place. So very regularly when I come out here, there are stars communicating with this place. Now, what's the advantage of that? Well, it's like take that amplified consciousness of nature and amplify it, you know, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. It so elevates the light level of the place, and our ability to touch the consciousness of nature in a place like this is just extraordinary. So this, again, is a very special spot, but there are many, many special spots. A star does not have to be talking to a spot for it to be an enlightened landscape. Again, just where there's lots of trees, where there are lots of birds, where there's lots of silence, lots of, or let's put it this way, an absence of interference from psychic energies, an absence of interference from radio frequencies. Those zones are going to have, and places, let me back up, places where there's underground water, where you might get those points of light, those mini vortexes in the environment. Spots like this exist around our planet, and I encourage you to visit, seek out and find these spots and visit them more frequently. Because when you spend time in a place like this, even if it's just 15 minutes or a half an hour or an hour, you just come by yourself or bring your family, but spend time. Don't come to do activities in places like this. Come to merge with the consciousness of nature and the silence. Come to be still, come to be silent. And when you do that, again, you generate your whole system like a tuning fork, moves into a state of resonance with the sound of the place. And the sound of the place is peace. And that acknowledgement that we are one with nature, that we're the same thing as the tree, that at a core we're all one, that generates the frequency of compassion. So you leave a place like this, again, like a wonderful acupuncture needle, and you take a piece of nature with you. You take a piece of the profound sound of peace and compassion with you into the world, and that ripples out. It is so phenomenally influential. You are so phenomenally influential, or can be so phenomenally influential to elevating the level of peace and compassion on our planet. And we so need that now. The human species needs that now in a very big way. So find these places that are in your area. Maybe it's your own backyard, but find these places, spend time in these places, and get out there and contribute in this way to our planet. With that, I'm going to say goodbye, and I hope you enjoyed a little piece of Page Springs, Arizona, and learned a little bit from this video today. Bye for now. Look forward to seeing you next time.